Hello. Today we're going to be talking about flashlights. I've got two different flashlights that we're going to compare. The first one is the Fenix LD22 V2, 800 lumens, 12,000 candela. We're going to be comparing it with this, the Nitecore EDC25, 3,000 lumens, and they say 22,000 candela, but we'll get into all that. First up is going to be construction and features. So both of these feature 6061 aluminum bodies. Obviously their form factors are very different. So this hand here we've got the Fenix, which is a much more traditional style of flashlight, obviously. It has basically two buttons. It's got the clicky tail cap and the mode select. Meanwhile, the Nitecore has this form factor that's more flat, slim, thin. It's got dual emitters at the front there, and it has two buttons. As far as construction goes, they feel pretty comparable. I don't think I would run them over with a car or anything. I will say the form factor is something we got to talk about. So obviously with the Fenix being a more traditional style, the bezel is going to be the thickest point. Meanwhile on the Nitecore, the back is the thickest point, and you can see it's appreciably thinner, which is very nice because I like to carry my flashlight in my rear pocket. And so if I had to sit on this for an extended period of time, it's not nearly as uncomfortable as sitting on this. Other than that, the construction seems very similar. They both feel fairly premium, especially considering the Fenix comes in at $65, the Nitecore at $75, although you can find it on sale for closer to $60, which is why I wanted to compare these two. They both do come with a lanyard from their manufacturers. The Fenix also comes with a Velcro nylon belt pouch. I think that's stupid. I just carry it in my pocket. But it's nice if you are on a work site or something and you have your pockets loaded down with other things. It's nice to have that option. The lanyards are comparable in quality. I actually prefer the Fenix's because you can actually use it around your wrist, which is nice, versus the Nitecore's is kind of like you could undo their looping here, but it's got this kind of cheap carabiner on it. Be nice to put it on a backpack or something, I suppose, but you can't really use it as like a lanyard around your wrist like you can with the Fenix. So let's get into the UI. We'll start with the Fenix here. Two buttons. It has the activation button and the mode select button. So activation is a traditional clicky tail cap, and the mode button is this little guy right up here. The activation button is recessed, and it has these wings that come up around it to prevent accidental activation. There's also 5 modes on this. So there is a moonlight mode, which looks like this, and then they progressively get up from there. I'll just go through those really quickly. 1, 2, 3, 4, just like that. It also has mode memory, so I just left that off in the high mode, and you can see it is still in the high mode. You can do a full click for constant activation or a half click for momentary activation. It also does have a strobe and an SOS. So you activate those by turning it on in any power level, doesn't matter. Press and hold the mode button. Now we've got strobe, and then we're going to change it over. We do a short click, and we will get SOS, and then a long press gets us back to constant on. Very simple UI. Most people are going to be familiar with something like this. Easy to use if you ever are in a situation that's high stress. You just click to activate. On the other hand, you have the Nitecore. Now, the first feature that I love about it is that we have a mode indicator and a power level indicator. So green is going to be our battery level, and blue is our power indicator. So if I go through the power levels here, actually, let's talk about this really quick. This is something I don't like. So right now, I'm in the lowest mode, but if you look, I will click the button to get to the next mode, and nothing has changed. All that's happened is the UI has come back up, which is kind of irritating. I wish that it would just stay on so that I don't have to deal with it turning off, because now if I go to click to change to the next mode, again, all I did is reactivate the UI. So to get to the next mode, I have to click when the UI is active or double click when it's deactive. So here's the second mode, third mode, fourth mode, and turbo. So very bright light. 3,000 lumens is what they claim. It also has a much cooler temperature than the Fenix, which we'll talk about. And we'll also talk about the candela of these lights, because there's some interesting things that you'll notice when we get to the beam shots. It also features this lockout mode. I carry it in half lockout. There's 2 different lockout modes, full and half. So when the light is in this configuration, if I tap the power button, I will get a red light that tells me that it's in lockout mode, which means that won't do anything until I double tap. or excuse me, tap and hold, which will get it to turn on. And then a long press should get it to turn back off. Perfect, back into half lockout. Now, what's nice about the half lockout is that the other button, that takes me straight to turbo. And it is programmable, so you can change it to strobe, but I prefer it just being on turbo. This is a on or off. It's a press and hold button. So the momentary activation button here, you can't get it to stay in turbo. In fact, as far as I can tell, there's not a way to get it to stay in turbo. You can only get it to stay in high. One more thing about the UI, too complicated. In a high stress situation, it'd be nice to have something other than turbo or strobe. And I also don't like that you have to wait so long from lockout mode for it to power up. It's like a good 1 to 2 seconds. And I don't like that if the UI goes dead, which we'll wait. Yep, there it is. And I click the button again. Nothing happens except that the UI comes back. So I don't like having to double click to do things, to remember anything. I prefer the simpler the better when it comes to a flashlight for me. With that, we will get into doing some beam shots with these two things. All right, we are out here on what is actually a pretty bright night out here. We've got pretty much a full moon with a little bit of cloud cover, and I've got some lights here, street lights, and then some lights down the street. And we're gonna do some beam shots here at night. So we're actually gonna start off here with the Nitecore. So this is the lowest mode that the Nitecore has available. As you can see, even on the tree here with the ground spotlight, you can still see it very well out here in front, and then out a little ways, we start to obviously taper off. This is the next brightest mode. Quite a bit brighter, a decent amount of throw here. That far tree is at about 60 yards. And then beyond that, there's another tree that in a minute here we'll probably see lit up. All right, so this is what I would call medium-high mode. We're definitely getting quite a bit more distance out of this, and the flood is actually really pretty solid. We get a lot of illumination up close and a decent amount far away. And then finally we will go to high. All right, this is high mode, so this is clearly significantly brighter, a really solid amount of throw. And then finally we will go to turbo. Turbo, lots of illumination up close and a very significant amount far away. Here is the moonlight mode. This is the lowest mode that the Fenix has available. You can see up here on the tree that has the spotlight here on the left, we kind of lose it a little bit. A little ways out, we get basically no illumination far away. A little bit up close here, but again, you can tell that the beam pattern is much tighter with the Fenix despite it having a lower candela rating. All right, so this is the low mode is what I would call this. So one step up from moonlight, get quite a bit more illumination up close. We can now definitely see it here on the tree. Again, it's got more of that spotlight effect. We're getting a little bit more on the truck over here and that tree right behind the truck, and then it pretty much tapers off at that far tree at about 60 yards. This is going to be kind of the medium mode, true medium. Again, here on the tree, lots of illumination. On the ground in front of us, lots of illumination. Now that tree behind the truck is pretty well illuminated, but that tree at about 60 yards is still fairly dark. We'll bump it up one more time here. All right, so this is our high mode. And again, the tree up close now, very bright, very easy to see. We still get a pretty solid amount of flood, but again, a much tighter beam pattern again, despite the candela rating being quite a bit lower, about half the candela. That far tree now at 60 yards is now a little more lit up. I still would not be able to identify anything necessarily at that tree, but I can now certainly see over there significantly better, and the high mode. All right, here we go. So up close, lots of power, lots of ground illumination, and that far tree there is now at 60 yards is quite a bit more well illuminated. The tree here at the truck significantly more as well. And then we will drop back down to the lowest mode here. So just side by side, we're going to go ahead and put both of these lights in their highest modes. We'll use turbo on the Nitecore. So here we've got the Fenix in high mode. Again, pretty solid illumination out to 60 yards or so. Past that, it's a little tough, and especially since we've got some ambient illumination, and then we've got the Nitecore, which really does indeed outclass it in terms of raw light output. The Candela 2 is higher, though not as significant as you might think. I would say that the Fenix still has a very nice beam pattern, and I prefer the color temperature. Okay, let's talk about final thoughts. Really quick though, let's talk about color temperature. So you heard me just talking a lot about color temperature with these two lights. Again, the Nitecore being significantly cooler and the Fenix significantly warmer. So the reason that color temperature is really important in my opinion is because air particulate. So I live in the desert. We get a lot of dust. It's really easy to get caught up in a dust storm, even if you're out on the range at night doing something. I just shot a low light class, a 2-day low light class, where we were doing a lot of shooting with handheld flashlights, not weapon mounted lights. And one of the things I noticed is guys who had much cooler temperature lights, like this Nitecore, for example, were struggling when shooting from the prone or from a seated position and their gun would kick up dust. It then became very difficult for them to see through that dust onto the target because a cooler temperature light will reflect a lot of that light back to you, the shooter. So having a warmer temperature like this Fenix, which is what I was using during that class, was really, really beneficial. So if you live in a really snowy environment, let's say, or in like the desert where I live, where you could get a lot of dust in the air, having a warmer temperature light can actually go a long way. Even, again, if it's lower lumens and on paper lower candela, although I gotta wonder if Fenix is really telling the truth about 11,500 candela. This seems like a really pretty tight beam pattern for only 12,000 candela. I will say that the Nitecore doesn't fall short in terms of candela. It claims 22,000, and you can definitely stretch this light out pretty far. Overall thoughts are that $65 for the Fenix, $75 for the Nitecore. Personally, I don't think you can really go wrong. The only things that maybe edge the Fenix for me are the UI is very simple, something I'm very familiar with, and in a situation where you ever had to pull this light out and use it instantly, it's just, I just click the button. That's all I do. Whereas with the Nitecore, yes, you do just click a button, right? You hit that turbo button. But I don't really love that if I wanted to get a different light setting or something, that I would just have to like finagle with this weird button and remember how many times that I had to click it, especially in the lockout mode, which is like how I like to carry it. That doesn't mean it's a bad light. It just means that maybe for a more tactical use, it's not the best because of its complexity. Nothing to sneeze at when it comes to light output. In terms of sheer light output, this easily outshines this Fenix, and actually probably punches above its weight class a little bit in terms of how bright it is. The candela is also nothing to sneeze at. You can easily see out to 300 or so yards. The other thing that I prefer over the Fenix, again, this is just geographical, I like the warmer temperature. The other thing about warmer temperatures is they tend to be more true to the eye in terms of color. So a really white light, a really cool temperature light will wash things out and make them appear different. A more yellow light will make things appear more true to how you would see them during the day. It doesn't necessarily preserve your night vision. It just means that colors are going to seem maybe more realistic than they otherwise would with an ultra bright white light. The form factor, definitely got to give it to the Nitecore. Much more comfortable to carry, especially where I like to carry, which is in the back pocket. Really quick, we'll talk too about the batteries. So another thing that's kind of cool about this Fenix is that it's a dual fuel system. So it comes with a rechargeable Fenix branded 1100 milliamp hour battery. It is USB-C rechargeable, so you just plug it in. It's got a little LED indicator on the top. Red means it's charging, blue means it's charged. But it's dual fuel, so you can also run it off of 2 AA batteries. Nice because if this, let's say this rechargeable battery goes dead for some reason and you're in a situation where you need more light, let's say you're at home, there's a power outage, the odds are your Xbox controller or your TV remote controller or something has AA's in it already that you could just pull out and swap in here. Whereas with this guy, you don't have that choice. It's a fixed battery. You can't remove it. Well, I mean, you probably could. I wouldn't. It's also USB-C rechargeable, which is nice, but you don't get that kind of added benefit of having the dual fuel capability. The moral of the story is pick whatever one you like, but carefully consider things like form factor and how much light do you really need for output? Do you really need all the fancy configuration options of the Nitecore? Or is the clicky tail cap and the single button mode selection good on the Fenix? Consider the 800 lumens, consider the candela ratings, and then make your choice. Again, these are within $10 of each other, and I would say you can't really go wrong with either, but you certainly one might be better for you than the other, like this Fenix probably is better for me.